by cabinet in the cabinet statement that minister on every Friday. We will have this briefing where everything on energy related issues will be directed to that session. On that note, colleagues, let me take this opportunity to welcome you all to this session and to indicate that those who already have the questions, you'll post them on the chat group. Let me not take any more time, but to invite the Minister of Electricity, Minister in the Office of the President, Minister Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, to take us through. Minister, we are all yours and welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Baloyi, and good afternoon to everyone on the call. And once more, just to express my appreciation at members of the media for making time to join us every Friday at this time so that we can have a more robust exchange in relation to our performance relative to the Energy Action Plan. And I also want to acknowledge our colleagues from Eskom who are part of the call, just as an illustration of the fact that we're working together to resolve this crisis that is confronting us. And to thank also the members of NICOM and of course the technical team there led by DG Baleni and Rudy. Thank you very much for the tremendous support. So as indicated, I'm going to ask to leave a bit early because I'm here in the Northern Cape. I'm visiting one of our projects, Redstone, the concentrated solar power project here in the Northern Cape. Of course, as you might well know, that is the single biggest renewable energy investments in the country at a ticket of about 11.5 billion rands. So I'm going to ask that you flag the slides there so that I'm able to take everyone through the presentation. Maybe the point to be made as I prepare to take you through the presentation is that we are making significant yet marginal and yet significant progress in relation to the improvement of the Energy Action Plan of Eskom. And I really want to pay tribute to the leadership of Eskom from the distinguished board led by Mr. Makwana and the Executive Management Committee led by the acting CEO and also in particular the head of generation, Mr. Bheki Nxumalo, and the various managers at the various power stations for their sterling work. I mean, the 2nd of June was very momentous in our journey to ensure that we address the issue of load shedding in the country. For those of you who don't know, is that we reached a 60% energy availability factor. Just to put it into context, the last time we reached an energy availability factor of 60% on a specific day was on the 2nd of September 2022. And when we started May, the improvement in relation to the energy availability factor is about 7 percentage points. And to put the 7 percentage points into context is that on average, 1 percentage point increase represents about 477 megawatts. So if you have a 77 percentage point increase, so you can see that you are breaching 3,000 megawatts, I'm sorry, of additional generation. So essentially talking about 3 stages of load shedding. So I really want to pay my respect to the leadership of Eskom for the sterling work that we are doing. And you will see that this is as a result of deliberate actions were measured, concise, or rather precise in how we want to resolve this, the energy issues as they confront us. And you remember in the last briefing, we did indicate that we are beginning to isolate stations. In the last briefing, I indicated that we are targeting Matla, Grill, Kendal, and Majuba. And we have also set targets for the attainment of, or the improvement in the energy availability factor. And also for those stations, we have also identified what are the actions that needs to be taken. So we're isolating those areas that are responsible for the regularity of the units being taken out and those areas that account for the most megawatts being taken out at each and every one of those stations. And working with the private sector, of course, we're adding additional capacity to work with the station managers. And how we're able to draw that capacity is relative to our diagnosis of the problem. So it's not just experts in a variety of areas, but it's experts in those areas that can help us to make the kind of improvement that we desire. So what has been the improvements on the aggregates? So you can see the fact that we have periods in the day where we don't have load shedding. It's significant. It's significant in that about 4 weeks ago, we're experiencing, even during the weekend,
Colleagues, I think we might have lost the voice of the minister. Connectivity in the Northern Cape might be a little bit of a challenge. The technical team will look at that. I think as we are busy trying to bring on the connectivity, we welcome the words of the minister by indicating that we had 60% of energy availability in the 6 months period since the 2nd of June. I hope we'll have the minister back soon.
Drawili, can you hear me now?
Yeah, Minister, thank you very much. We have you back.
Hello?
Can then proceed.
I'm very sorry, like I said, I'm in the remote part of the country. Maybe let me just run through the presentation. Just to say that part of those improvements is the fact that we are able to reduce those losses, if you like, unplanned capability, capacity loss factor, I think.
I think, Minister, we have just lost you a bit, but let me request the team from the Northern Cape to make sure that they allow you to proceed speaking as you were audible from our side.
Can you hear me now?
Minister, you are audible. You can proceed.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly, Minister. You can proceed.
Oh, okay, no, it's about that. We have the unplanned capability loss factor is now at about less than 16,000, and remember that we're at about 18,000. So there's significant improvement in that, and we're also scaling down on planned maintenance. Just go to the last previous slide. Scaling down on planned maintenance. If you can go back to, yes, I'll tell you when to do. And then also we are also experiencing conditions where generation from wind power has increased, and this has to do with the weather that is being experienced in the coastal areas. And also a major contributor to the performance we are seeing is that the demand has not peaked to levels that we had envisaged. Of course, there's still more days ahead of us, winter days, and it's likely going to reach levels that we had projected. But from now, we're benefiting from the fact that we are experiencing a lesser peak demand, or averaging about 29,000 megawatts. And then we also don't want to underestimate the work that we're doing in relation to the demand side measures. So we're beginning to see that there's a downward trend, and what we want to do is to ensure that we sustain that trend at the least, and at best, we want to continue to ensure that the trajectory is of a negative trend. We did indicate the last time that we have teams that are trying to help us to optimize the open cycle gas turbines to ensure that we're able to meet, to close the delta between generation and demand, so that we can undermine the severity of load shedding. And if we achieve a load factor of over 20%, so we anticipate that we can reduce approximately 2 stages of load shedding. And then there is some work that NERSA has done. Remember that there's areas where we require NERSA concurrence, and this has to do with the program that we're doing at Komati. As you know, that the renewable energy interventions we are making there, Komati has been mothballed, and there's a number of solar and PV projects that are taking place there. We have received concurrence there from NERSA, and also the area around the load shedding reduction program and the cross-border programs are expected by the end of July. That is the NERSA concurrence. So we really wanted to just illustrate that there's work that is happening, and that work is manifesting in the levels of load shedding, the reduced levels of load shedding. Of course, we want to sustain this performance, and key to this is the performance of the Eskom units, so that they become more and more reliable. And of course, there is a work that we are beginning to see, a healthy project pipeline of embedded generation projects. I'm sure you know the historical evolution of this policy reform, that now we have removed the threshold for licensing, and therefore we are beginning to see that there's increased activity on the private sector side to ensure that they benefit from this reform agenda. And you can see that there has been an elevated increase from the private sector. They are beginning to come on stream and illustrate their appetite to exploit the reforms that have happened. So what we're trying to illustrate here is, of course, the projects that have been registered with NERSA. You still require the NERSA registration, so that we get to know your identity. And you can see that, the period of January to March, the registration is over, I think, 2,427 megawatts. So you can see that the trend is going up. And then you also need to, as part of going to the next stages, the budget codes from Eskom. So you can see that the pipeline is growing, and there's a total of about 13 gigawatts of these projects that are in the budget code phase, and then about 9,000 megawatts of that is still in progress. Of course, one of the issues that can undermine our ability to bring a renewable project on stream is the degree to which we are able to match those projects with the grid access. And what we are trying to illustrate there on your right is that the Northern Cape, the one area that has got the best irradiation levels. If you had to do an irradiation atlas of the country, you'll find that if you like, the quality radiation levels are in the Northern Cape. There's no grid capacity. And of course, you look at your coastal areas, the Western Cape and the Eastern Cape, we are fast approaching conditions where we'll not have a grid capacity. So it's important that we are able to match, if you like, the release of or the preferred bidder status of these projects to areas where there's a grid capacity. And you can see Limpopo, Gauteng, and the northwest KZN, and there's still significant amount of grid that is available. And that's why it's important that we have to be deliberate in how we go through the next bid windows. You know that the last bid window, about 3,000 megawatt remains unallocated as a result of the absence of committed grid. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide really talks to the kind of the key interventions, again, in relation to the energy action plan. So we're beginning to show you what these energy sources are, the type of technologies that are there. And you can see that there's a significant amount of pipeline. So it's a healthy pipeline of projects. When a study was conducted, a survey just to understand from project developers what sits in their pipeline. I mean, there's about 66 gigawatt of wind and solar projects that are in development across the country. Of course, this pipeline will be undermined if you don't resolve the issues of grid capacity. And that's why there's a need for us to address two issues in relation to the grid, is the expansion of the lines and also the strengthening of the grid, so that we are able to benefit from this significant pipeline of projects, and it's going to help us in the decarbonization agenda. As we go to the next slide, sorry about the delay. We're going to the next slide. Of course, the next slide talks to the work that NECOM is doing. And remember that what NECOM attempts to do amongst the many areas of focus is to ensure that we undermine over-bureaucratization, the delays in the permitting and licensing that is essential to the graduation of these projects to arrive to at the financial close and also to get into construction. So there are a number of critical players in the ecosystem on government side. First one is around the environmental impact assessment. This can undermine the speed with which you are able to reach financial close. So you can see that we do have a legal instrument that can helps us to facilitate the acceleration of these projects to get to at least getting a response in relation to their EIA applications. We invoke the provisions of the Infrastructure Development Act, and in that we are able to designate a project as a strategic integrated project. And once it's designated as such, then it means that we need to get the response from the authority in relation to this application for within a period not exceeding rather 57 days. And you can see with issues around the water use licenses and the general authorizations as it relates to Department of Water and Sanitations, we make the point that the notice gazetted to require only that the solar PV and battery storage projects with 90 days timelines for water use license applications. They only require general authorizations. And then with regards to grid connection, we were able to show to you that working with Eskom, we are able to ensure that we accelerate the issues around the budget codes and the like. So we're moving from 90 days with regards to cost estimate letter to from 90 to 50 days, budget codes from 6 months to 4 months, registration from 3 months to 19 days. And then the issues around the land access, we show you that the issues that relates to subdivision of agricultural land, act consent of land use authorization. Previously, it used to be 90 days. Now we're at 30 days. Your Section 53 approvals, of course, they had not been timelines. We are setting timelines for ourselves so that it's not an open-ended process. We're putting it at 60 days. And also issues around servitude, options registered or to be registered in favor of the project company and or Eskom over the project site. There has not been timelines, and we think that it's important that we are able to announce our intention by committing ourselves to a timeline and we're talking about 94 days. So really, this is a summary of the work that we're doing. I think in conclusion, the point I want to make is the kind of marginal and yet significant improvement, an accumulation of the work that we've been doing across the board, and of course, principally led by Eskom and NECOM. And it's not by accident that we are where we are. Of course, we're still going to be confronted with a very difficult winter, but I think it's reassuring to see that we are making progress in this regard. I'll leave it there, Bra Willie. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister. I think as a country, we welcome the 60% energy availability that, Minister, you have announced that we had since the 2nd of June. Clearly, this is a demonstration of us making headway with our plans into improving the energy availability. And thank you very much, and thanks for the team for the work that they are putting on that. Colleagues, let me depart a little bit from the schedule that we have prepared to then invite questions to the Minister so that we are able to release him as he's busy with the issue of electricity availability in the Northern Cape. I'm not sure who would assist me with the questions that have been sent. Minister, from our side, I already have a question from Netwerk Vier en Twintig. The question from William Horn says, is the Minister aware and currently involved in looking at the alleged Eskom executive thought to be involved in sabotage at the utility? That is the question. We have also questions from Terence Creamer, Minister. The first one being Terence Creamer from Engineering News. The first question says, have the private technical specialists been deployed to the 4 coal stations yet? If not, what is the reason for the delay? If so, what are their names, their areas of expertise, and their terms of reference? The second question from Terence Creamer again is, what is the status of Eskom's grid queuing rules to ensure that projects that are not viable do not hog scarce grid capacity? Should the risk mitigation IPP program not be closed as an active program, given that they are preventing the others from using those grid connections? So those are the questions, Minister, that we have for now that we can share with you.
Can the host allow me to show my face?
With pleasure, Minister. You just press on the video sign.
No, it says that you can't start your video because the host has stopped it. So I just want to say to everyone online, I'm not hiding my face. The host is not allowing me to show my face, but maybe let me answer the questions. Thank you very much to the colleagues there for the questions. And maybe to start with the question from our colleagues from Netwerk 24, just to indicate that as previously stated, we have 9 work streams, and work stream number 6 is led by some of the most decorated generals in the area of investigations in the country, and also our colleagues from SSA. Those are the people who are most qualified to answer that question. So I will leave it to them to answer that question at the right time. You remember that we did commit that we are going to dedicate one of the NECOM briefing session to take you through on the progress that we are making in relation to fighting crime, corruption, and safety at Eskom, including its installations. So yes, it's not an area that I'm actively involved in, but it's a major component of the work that we are doing. And we have left that to the experts, and at the right time, they will make that announcement through this platform and many other platforms. So I will not venture into that space because I'm neither qualified nor have the mandate to do that. But the assurance I want to give to you is that there's a considerable amount of progress that is being made in that area. And you'll notice that at the time when they give that briefing, they should be in a position to give us additional details. And yes, to Terence's question, Mr. Krim, Terence, thanks for the question again. The last time I was here, we did indicate that the experts were meant to start on this previous Monday. And I'm sure that Rudy will be able to take us through of whether they had already started. But the assurance I was giving was that they will be starting this week. So the starting was meant to be Monday, the 5th of June. So I'm sure that we will be able here to give you that progress. You're absolutely correct. I think one of the issues I've been lamenting as a minister is that there are those projects that they've been given grid access and they're not exercising that right, and it's undermining other projects that are ready that can provide a significant relief to the energy grid. And in fact, there's a number of project sponsors who have approached the office just to say, look, we are ready to connect to the grid, but we can't access the grid because there are others who are hogging this, the grid. And some of those projects has taken an inordinate amount of time to come onto the grid. So I'm of the opinion, I've expressed that with the team, that we must find a legal mechanism to enforce a requirement that you need to exercise that right within a prescribed period. Otherwise, it's open-ended and people can even use it to trade with that right, because it carries a lot of value. The fact that you've got the grid access and undermine other good projects to come onto the grid. So I'm sure that our colleagues from Eskom can be able to provide a more elaborate answer, but I was just saying at a very high level, as part of our efforts to ensure that we accelerate the improvement in relation to accommodating new generation capacity, that is one of the areas that is receiving attention. Mr. Baloyi, I think those were the only two questions. And like I said, without undermining the platform, I'm being hosted here at the Redstone. So they're still taking me through what some of the issues are in relation to bringing this project on board. Of course, it was meant to come on board, this 100 megawatt, I think October of this year. I think there's been delays and they had invoked force majeure in some of the areas. So they are taking me through what those areas are and what is the revised timelines. Of course, they'll still have a discussion with the Eskom, but we need to have an appreciation of where these big projects are relative to their commitment to bring the electrons onto the grid. And to the extent that there are delays, we'll do everything possible to undermine anything that could constitute delays on the part of government. And that's why you are here. So I'll leave it here, Mr. Baloyi, and Rudy and our Eskom colleagues will take it from here. Thank you.
Minister, with due apology, let me quickly take the last three. I think you can then give direction in terms of reference. The other one is from Antoinette Slabet. She says a large wind project in Nelson Mandela Bay is being delayed because NERSA has not approved municipal wheeling. Is the NECOM addressing that? The other one is from Carol Payton from News 24. She says, last week you mentioned that South Africa will get 80 megawatts from Mozambique. Was this supposed to come from the power ship, which has now been refused permission to moor by Mozambican government? And also Antoinette Slabet continues to say another uncertainty is that that is delaying the Nelson Mandela Bay is the dispute between the Frankfurt distributor rural development has with Eskom about the use of embedded generation to mitigate load shedding. Is NECOM involved in speeding up the dispute resolution process to bring certainty to investors? I think, Minister, these are the last ones that we would request you to look at, and then we can release you.
Well, thank you very much, Antoinette and Carol. Yes, I can confirm I'm very much familiar with the challenges of wheeling with regards to the wind project in the Eastern Cape, Nelson Mandela. is on my table, and of course, we know who the off-takers, potential off-takers are, and the project developer. In fact, we met with the Premier of the Eastern Cape and the mayors there, and we should be concluding this. Of course, part of the delay in dealing with this was the changes in leadership also at Nelson Mandela Bay. But this is sitting with us. We think we have the capacity to resolve this question, especially because the off-taker is very keen on ensuring that the transaction happens. So I'm more than confident that we should be able to address this, including the other one that has been mentioned in Nelson Mandela Bay. So that has been brought to our attention. We are dealing with it, and I'm more than confident that once we find resolution, I'll be able to come back to you. And then with regards to Carol's question, my counterpart from Mozambique is making a return visit. We're meeting again on Monday, the 12th, when I visited him there. And EDM, they did indicate the pipeline and indicated to us there's 80 megawatts that is immediately available, and that was coming from a power ship that is already generating. It's already generating, at least on the version they've given us, that's immediately available. And the reason why we're doing this follow-up is because they indicated that there's potential of this being scaled up, and they are coming to tell us whether it's possible to scale it up to more than 80 megawatts. But the long and short of it is that it's on a power ship that is already generating. And then and it's surplus to what is generating. So that's why it's immediately available. And then I did indicate that there's about 1,900 megawatts, to be precise, of what is could be available in the next 6 months. In our engagement with my counterpart and the ESCOM equivalent in Mozambique, we did indicate that they will prefer that, in fact, that 6 months be made shorter. And out of our conversation there, we then committed that we should meet in 14 days, and they'll come back to us with what is possible. And that's why we're meeting on the 12th at the Union Buildings. The minister will be here, and I'm sure in the next NECOM briefing, I should be in a position to tell you how far we are and be more precise now, because what we know is a minimum is the flow of 80 megawatts, and whether it's possible to scale it up, and if we do scale it up, to how many megawatts, and whether the 900 megawatts will be available in the next 6 months, or it could be shorter. And of course, we'll do this NECOM briefing. Just as a parting shot, next time when I do this NECOM briefing, I'll be with my team in Vietnam. Why are we in Vietnam? I did indicate before that Vietnam is an exceptional good story of how you are able to exploit the dispensation of feed-in tariff to be able to expand and improve grid capacity. Over a period of 12 months, Vietnam was able to achieve an additional 9.5 gigawatt onto the grid. So we've had extensive engagement with the ambassador of Vietnam here in the country, and we are advised that it's important that we meet with the project developers, the people who manage the grid, for us to have an intimate understanding of what how they've been able to achieve that, and also other the policy issues that requires attention, because they did indicate that as a result of that success, now they're sitting with a different problem of the grid being unstable because generation far out exceeds demand. So I think there are lessons to be learned also, although we're sitting with a different problem where demand is exceeding generation, but I think with the aggressive nature of how we want to bring in new renewable additional generation capacity, including the one that will be made possible through wheeling and also through the feed-in tariff or net billing, it's going to introduce technical challenges. So it's important that we were able to have an appreciation of an experience of those who have done it before us, so that we don't repeat those experiences. And then we'll also proceed to China, the biggest manufacturer of solar PV. Why is that important? It's important because Public Works will be going out on tender now for the retrofitting of renewable energy saving solutions on water and electricity. So, and then we are going to be very aggressive. I did indicate we are working on a financing facility for households to be able to roll out rooftop solar. So the capacity that in the country is not sufficient, that is production of these components, is not sufficient to meet the demand. So you can introduce a excellent financing facility, and therefore there's going to be significant amount of additional and elevated offtake, but you'll find that you are running short of components. Of course, the conversation is about getting the components quicker into the country in the short term, in the medium term to assemble in the country, in the long term to ensure that there's production of those components in the country. In addition to the two big entities that are producing, of course, we are beginning to ensure that there's a significant demand of solar PV. So we don't want the bottleneck to be the availability of these components. So really the intention is to do that, but we'll still conduct the NECOM briefing. I think it's important that we get to account to you at every corner so that there's an appreciation of that which we are doing. So as we resolve the generation issue, the utility scale, the new generation, I think the opportunities also at with regards to rooftop solar solutions, and we want to address the financing issue and the availability of components. But thank you very much, Mr. Baloyi and the team. I'll end it here. Thanks, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Minister. Clearly, it shows that all hands are on deck to address the issue of load shedding. And surely the new ministry has hit the ground running. And I think there are now green shoots that are coming out of all the endeavors. And there is a lot of work that is going on. The other question on the issue of the role of nuclear in the energy mix, I think it will find expression on the presentations that will follow. I now invite Rudy Dix, who is the head of the PMO in the presidency, to give feedback on the energy action plan. Rudy?
Ntaji Baloyi, I don't think I would necessarily have to do that. I think Minister has covered it excellently and in amount of detail that's there. So there is no need for me to present. I think Minister has covered the NECOM report in his presentation as well. What I think would be important is just to perhaps answer the two questions that I think Terence had asked. I think, Terence, the one thing on the grid connection, just as adding on to Minister's point, is that, of course, as you know, grid connection rules that have been developed are currently with NERSA. And NERSA has conducted a whole set of consultation sessions. We're hoping that they would finalize that so there are clear rules as to what happens with, some of the principles that we've been engaging with as use it or lose it. There's no intent to utilize it, as the Minister says, in speed, within a required time, then it should be given to someone else. I think these are all issues that do require for us to be able to make sure that NERSA does make those decisions on the grid queuing rules. The point for us around grid queuing and around how we deal with this is fundamentally about who can get megawatts as quickly as possible onto the grid, and that's really the most important principle. Minister is still on the call. We did announce last week that we were deploying two sets of teams, one to deal with the load factor around the OCGT, in particular this the logistics challenge at Unkellig, and the second was to the team to support the technical work, but also mentoring support for the 4 power stations that we announced. Unfortunately, Minister, on Monday, as I've indicated, we were successfully only able to deploy the technical team to the OCGT site at Unkellig. We are still finalizing the final terms of reference for the technical team that would go to the 4 power stations. That exercise is nearing completion, so we can get them out as quickly as possible. Terence, as soon as that is done, we will be able to provide you information around the names, the details, the the technical work that we'll be doing. But it's a two-pronged process. It's about providing the technical support, as that, that's important, but also given the experience of those individuals that have come on board and said they're willing to assist, they could provide significant mentorship and support to power station managers in Eskom. So that exercises will be completed, and we're finalizing the terms of reference, and we'll advise as soon as that is done. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rudy Dix. Without taking much time, let me invite then the general manager from Eskom on the systems outlook, and it's going to be Eric Shan-Magum. Eric, you can give us the systems outlook, and from there on, then we'll go to Q&As.
Thank you very, very much, sir. So I'm just going to pretty much present one slide to give you the system briefing. Let me share the slide, if okay. Kindly confirm if you can see the slide, William.
Yeah, the slide is loading. Yeah, it is visible. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you very much. I think when one looks at just complementing the feedback from the minister, let me just enable my, my video. Just to complement the minister in terms of the feedback, I think the system's still trending well. I think sadly in the last hour, we had 2 units that we had to take down because of boiler tube leaks. That was at Majuba and at Matla. But the good news is we still have good available capacity, and the demand is down. As we speak, the capacity available is around 29,670. With us taking out those 2 units, the planned maintenance has pretty much gone up to just over 3,000, but it's in line with the commitment we've made in terms of maintaining the plan over winter, is to ensure that the planned maintenance stays below 3,000. The unplanned maintenance, the breakdown sits at 15,700. We are pushing hard to get below the 15,000 threshold, but once again, with the much lower demand, we are actually seeing no load shedding. And I think you're probably aware from the 1st of June, with the new tariff being implemented, quite a few of the big plants have been taken out for scheduled maintenance. That's also, I think, helping us with the demand. And just moving on in terms of the reserves, our shortfall is at 3,900. If you move to the extreme right-hand side, I think the good news is that when one looks at our morning peaks and evening peaks, it's moved from the traditionally orange and red to now the green, which means at the end of the day, we also utilize lesser diesel reserves. The projection for the morning peak and evening peak is generally no load shedding and moving into stage 3 and 4. I think, unfortunately, with us taking out the 2 units at Matla and in Majuba, we'll actually tomorrow exercise stage 1 during the day, and we'll go into stage 4. But hoping to recover those units and then move back to, no load shedding. Looking at the top right-hand side, I think comforting to know that our diesel reserves, we still have sufficient diesel reserves, and the water levels are looking good. Just in terms of the bottom left-hand side, I think just to give you a brief overlook in terms of outages on current slip, we've been trending at just over 3,000 megawatts for many weeks, and we've had good recoveries at 3 of the stations, resulting in us now having the outage slips trending around 1,500. Just in terms of the next few days, looking at today, we're expecting to have 3 units that will return at about 1,354 megawatts. Looking at in the next 4 days, we are expecting 4 units at approximately 1,722. And then the partial load losses, we're expecting to clear around 288 megawatts. Over the long term, we are looking at pretty much 12 units that we still need to bring back, which is around 4,800. Just then in terms of the overall recovery, I think looking at the big units that we were going to bring from the breakdowns, we are on track to sort of trend around 13,500 megawatts. I think with us at this stage maintaining lower demand levels, the system's looking good. But I must stress that the system is still vulnerable. The teams have been dispatched. I think there's good focus. I need to also highlight that when one looks at the power stations like Medupi and Peking, they are trending quite positively continuously. What we have seen over the last week and a half is that stations like Camden, Duva, Arnott, and especially Tutuka are trending much more positively, and that's actually helped us recover from the average of about 18,000 megawatts on breakdown to about 15,500. That's my feedback, William. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eric, for the systems outlook update, and also the emphasis that you have put that despite losing two, but we are still on a better platform. On that note, let me then invite any questions from the people who have joined us in this session. I might check on the Q&A platform, but also we have allowed them to raise the hands. So I'm not sure if from that other side, by any way of hand, there is any question. I think it appears most of the questions that were posted were directed at the minister and have been handled. I'm trying to check also by way of hand if we have any. Perhaps maybe to take this opportunity to indicate that today the Commissioner of Police, Lieutenant General Masemola, did also give the police side of fighting the crime that is related to ESCOM issues and so on. I think they did brief earlier. Any other questions that we can invite? Now, thank you very much. From our side on the platform, we don't have any questions. Let me then take this opportunity to thank the Minister in absentia, who's already on that side. But if there are any other questions that you see from that side, you can alert me.
There's a hand from William Horn.
William, you are welcome.
Good afternoon. This is William Horn from Netwerk 24. My question just to Mr. Shoemago is what he could ascribe the sudden massive improvement in the UCLF to. Is that the success of maintenance that has severely increased over the last few months, or is it something else? Thank you very much.
William, thank you for that question. So I think there are a couple of issues that has helped. To start off with, I think in the last week we've had good solar, generation coming through, and better than previous weeks. We've also had great wind resources generation coming through in the last week. With the cold fronts coming through, we do see better wind resources. So that's number two. Number three is that when you see on the demand side, as I explained, on the 1st of June, the new tariff kicked in, and generally what we see is the night before is an absolute peak, and then the big plants then go on outage for major shutdown, and as a result the demand drops, and the demand patterns, as much as we haven't exactly qualified it, does range of anything between 800 and 1,000 megawatts. Now, when you look at the slips, I've mentioned there are three units that have come back resulting in the slips dropping from above 3,000 to about 1,500. So if you add the slip clawback together with what we've seen on the solar generation, on the wind generation, together with the drop in demand, we've seen a gain of about 2,300, as I said, on the generation side. It's actually helped with the recovery. And the good thing is, I think the hard work that the generation guardians have been putting for many weeks, we are starting to see the benefit. From the generation side, I think when we presented the outlook, the winter outlook, we pretty much highlighted that we will try to bring the breakdowns to below 15,000. That would be critical, considering the projected forecast. We will try to control the planned maintenance to between 1,500 and below 3,000, and having the sufficient diesel resources. So it's a combination of those issues. Lastly, I think the generation executive, newly appointed executive, has made it his absolute priority to dispatch some of the more experienced power station general managers to, for example, to Tuka, to Letabo, and also permanent appointments made at the coal division, PED. So this, I think, together has brought back some accountability. I must highlight, we haven't seen Tutuka perform that well for many, many months, and we have potentially three units actually on the bar. So that would be the combination of issues that has actually helped us in the last week and a half, William.
Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you very much for the comprehensive response. Colleagues, can I indicate that all the presentations will be made available to the members of the media, especially the ones that we have on our database? They will be shared from that side. And on that note, colleagues, let me also, in the absence of further hands, thank the panelists for the time and the information that was shared, including also the minister. Thank you for availing the office of the minister, for making sure that you avail the minister. And on that note, colleagues, this webinar briefing on Eskom is adjourned, and thank you very much and have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.